Have you ever made a mistake so big that it kills you? I mean, if you're watching this right now, probably not, but not like metaphorically, like organs shutting down, plot, credits roll, your time's up. That's all you get type mistake. Well, there's a conspiracy that the once great John Wayne actually did. The story of the Conqueror is one of a movie so bad, so poorly cast, and so catastrophically misjudged that it's been blamed for killing nearly half the people who worked on it. A literal radioactive film set, a miscast Mongolian warlord, and a Hollywood legend nuked by his own ambition and lack of awareness. Strap in, because the movie The Conqueror is a rare case of a movie that managed to bomb twice, once in theaters and once on the Geiger counter as well.
The past is sacred. I found more than I expected.
Let's start with the casting. 1954, John Wayne is at the peak of his powers, okay? He was the six-shooting, cigarette-smoking, all-American man. The embodiment of masculinity. But let's look a little bit closer. John Wayne, or Marion Morrison, was born in 1907. But he didn't become a star overnight. No, he started out as a USC football player who lost his scholarship due to a body surfing injury. And if you know anything about body surfing, you'll know that a body surfing injury is tremendously impressive considering nothing can hurt you except the water. So like with most dudes whose dreams fail, they get into a Joe job. And John Wayne's Joe job was to lug furniture around movie sets. But his big break came when a director noticed his talents off screen. In John Wayne's case, director Raoul Walsh saw something in those Depression era sad eyes and the haunting smell of cigarette smoke, slapped on him the cowboy name of John Wayne and hired him for a movie. Over the next 5 decades, he turned stoicism into an art form and cowboy swagger into a brand. He helped define the Western genre, and he played everything from heroic sheriffs to colonial soldiers to Mongolian warlords, apparently. He remained a cultural juggernaut well into the 70s and was imitated by everyone from Clint Eastwood to cartoon dogs. So naturally, because during the 50s John Wayne was who John Wayne was, someone at RKO Studios thought to themselves, you know what, let's take this all-American boy, chuck him in a culturally insensitive mustache, and let him just burn history to the ground for like a solid 2 hours. And it wasn't just something that someone suggested to John Wayne either, like he really wanted this role. Like he really wanted this role. A Midwestern drawl, bronze makeup, and he was playing the most feared emperor of all time. It's like casting Vin Diesel as Mother Teresa.
You don't turn your back on family.
The script for this was written by Oscar Millard, an otherwise respectable screenwriter who had worked with Alfred Hitchcock and written episodes of Maverick and movies like No Highway in the Sky. Honestly, he must have lost a bet to pick this one up, because even for the 50s, you must have sat there and gone, this can't possibly work. Clinically insane producer Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire and aviation mogul, was also involved as a producer and signed off on it immediately without a second thought, which is pretty par for the course, I guess, for Howard Hughes. If there's one thing that Hughes loved more than airplanes, it was making terrible decisions with incredible confidence. Okay, from where we are now, 1954, let's rewind a little bit. We're going back to 1953. The US government flexes its nuclear muscles with Operation Upshot Knot Hole.
What did he say?
It sounds dirty, but I promise you it's not. 11 nuclear tests were carried out during this operation. One of them was called the Grabble Shot, which also sounds dirty, but it's the 50s. It's the 50s. It was the first atomic shell fired from a cannon. It exploded with a yield comparable to Hiroshima. It sent a towering mushroom cloud of radioactive debris drifting eastward. They did this in Nevada, by the way. And luckily for the people who also didn't think this through, the wind pushed all of the radioactive fallout eastward, about 100 miles to the only place within that radius that actually had anyone living there. Naturally, the town I'm talking about, St. George, Utah, became one of the most contaminated places in all of America at the time. And guess where they chose to film The Conqueror? It was St. George, Utah. Yeah, you got it. Well done. You're keeping up. I like this. You've been doing so well. Top of the class. Gold star for you, Matt, because honestly, I'm proud. I'm proud of you. Over 6 grueling weeks, the cast and crew worked in the Escalante Desert, just 137 miles downwind from the Nevada testing site. They kicked up radioactive dust that had settled into the sand. Main cast and hundreds of extras rolled in it for fight scenes. And then when they finished shooting in Utah, Howard Hughes in his infinite wisdom wanted the sets to look identical. And what do you do when your only set dressing is sand? you take some of the sand. And he said, you know what, I can make an RKO soundstage look like Mongolia. We just need to bring sand. Just bring the sand with us. Honestly, I've got enough money. I'm Howard Hughes. He approved and trucked in 60 metric tons. That's 120,000 kilos of radioactive sand. Because if you're gonna make a deadly mistake like this and potentially cause cancer for hundreds of people, you may as well full send at this point, right? And if you've got money, I mean, he's Howard Hughes. I think the worst part is cast and crew were actually aware of this danger. John Wayne even brought a Geiger counter to the set to make sure that he was in safe conditions. He wasn't, and he still went along with it. Apparently, Hughes even hired some government scientists to come out and test it, and they certified it as safe, and everyone just got back to work. And if there's anyone that you can trust in the 1950s, it's the US government and Howard Hughes. You know what, speaking of Howard Hughes, let's take a look at his hand in this. Hughes was many things: a genius, a billionaire, a pioneer, and also completely off of his rocker, I guess. By the time the Conqueror was in production, Hughes was well into his recluse era. He lived in darkened hotel rooms with sealed windows, with lots of tissues nearby, and apparently jars of his own wee. He had OCD, extreme germophobia, and essentially the decision-making skills of a toddler with an infinite credit card. And yet somehow he still controlled RKO Studios and managed to be an executive producer for this absolute shit show, albeit from a distance. It was Hughes who had picked the St. George location for filming in the first place, despite knowing personally that they would be 220 kilometers from a site where they had let off 31 nuclear bomb detonations. He knew this full well because at the time of the detonations, he was living in a 5-bedroom cottage next to the Desert Inn motel that he would eventually buy and turn into his weird Howard Hughes fortress. But why would he pick the specific spot? You know, America's a big place. Land-wise, it's the same size as Australia, which is basically all desert. He chose it because, according to Hughes, this one area looked the most like Mongolia, despite the fact that he'd never been to Mongolia, he'd never seen a film about Mongolia, and the only thing he knew of Mongolia was black and white pictures that he saw in encyclopedias. I swear, due diligence in the 1950s is like, look, if you watch my videos, you'll know that health and safety was out the window, but I mean, good God. Now, we can look at the stage, the radiation, and the subsequent sickness all we like, but even movies like 1925's Ben-Hur can be blamed for the death of over 100 horses. And yet, despite that, it still holds a special place in film history. The Conqueror, on the other hand, 30 years later, still had acrobatic stunt horse scenes, ridiculously pretentious dialogue, anachronistic moments, and just a perpetually pissed off Agnes Moorhead. Like, if you ever actually get to sit down and watch the movie, it is atrocious, dude. Oh, and the pièce de résistance has got to be them putting John Wayne in his ridiculous mustache in a Christ-like pose and parading him around. Critics obviously deplored the film. Amongst the poor quality, miscasting, and problematic choices, lo and behold, filming near a nuclear testing site also didn't really help reviews. It was rightly criticized for its historical inaccuracies and its overall failure to live up to the epic scope of its subject matter. This is in the 1950s too, and the criticism due to the time period also ignored the blatant, like, yellow face aspect of it because they're all supposed to be Mongolians, John Wayne included. Bear in mind though, this is almost 20 years before Breakfast at Tiffany's. You know, Mickey Rooney played Mr. Yunoshi with the big buck teeth and that whole thing. In 1961, the New York Times review of the film said that Mickey Rooney's buck-toothed myopic Japanese was broadly exotic. What the guys? And the Conqueror sucked even without the racism. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. The whole point of this video is to tell you that there was a movie that may or may not have killed John Wayne. Right? Okay, so out of the 220 people involved in production, 91 people developed cancer, that's 41%. 46 people died from it, that's 21%. And among the dead, John Wayne, stomach cancer, 1979. Susan Hayward, brain cancer, 1975. Agnes Moorhead, uterine cancer, 1974. Pedro Armendariz, suicide after terminal cancer diagnosis, 1963. Let me get pages here. And then Dick Powell, it just says cancer 1963. I don't think Dick Powell wanted anyone to know what cancer Dick Powell had. Dick Powell. The media, however, which is where I got most of this information from the 1980s through to now, don't really give a shit about facts. And and it just, because it doesn't sell papers, right? People magazine published a bombshell article that exploded like a PR nuke. The children of John Wayne, Susan Hayward, and Dick Powell fear that fallout killed their parents. The media went wild and the Pentagon allegedly begged, please don't let us be the ones who killed John Wayne. At first glance, these numbers are alarming until you zoom out. According to the National Cancer Institute, the average lifetime cancer risk in 1980 when the article was released was 41 to 43%, with a mortality rate of 21 to 23%. The Conqueror crew, 41%. Death toll, 21%. That's not a statistical spike, that's normal numbers. The article would not have sold if the article was titled, hey, everyone in the 50s smoked themselves into a coffin. And the article posted in 1980, no cancer types were specified, and they casually left out all of the dates when all of these people passed away. One study estimated that the actual radiation exposure on set was 1 to 4 millirems per day, which is about what you would get on a flight from LA to New York. You'd need 100,000 times that number to explain a cancer cluster of that size. And while filming over 4 months or 120 days, those levels don't reflect the numbers at all. There was 3 other films shot in that area in subsequent years. There was The 10 Commandments starring Charlton Heston in 1956, Sergeants 3 starring Frank Sinatra in 1962, and The Greatest Story Ever Told in 1965 that starred Charlton Heston and John Wayne, because obviously this guy's just a sucker for punishment. Like, he knew the sand was radioactive. He knew, and he still went back because give me that money. Oh my God. Did this guy want to die? I might be being a bit melodramatic here, but if you know that the radiation in the sand is unsafe levels, that you yourself tested personally, and you go back because paycheck? I mean, good God. The title of the video is The Movie That Killed John Wayne. But let's talk about John Wayne's other killer that would have sparked this off. Had he not even put on bronze face paint and a racist mustache, this would have got him eventually. He loved cigarettes. He didn't just smoke, he chain smoked like it was an Olympic sport. By some accounts, the Duke went through 6 packs a day. That is 120 cigarettes every 24 hours. If he was awake for 16 hours a day, that is a cigarette every 8 minutes. The man even had a cigarette assistant who had to be on set with him at all times, like some kind of weird tobacco butler. He posed with cigarettes, he advertised cigarettes, he did interviews where he was constantly smoking a cigarette. He said they helped him relax. They also had the amazing added benefit of giving him incredibly serious lung cancer in 1964. Because of this, doctors removed 1 of his lungs and 4 of his ribs. And did he quit smoking? No. So yeah, the radiation was bad, and rolling around in sand that you then take home with you, contaminating your living space, and you continue to marinate in that radiation for months and months on end, probably not great. Going back 10 years later and filming another movie, also not a fantastic start. But these articles they tried to push in the 1980s, and the payout that John Wayne's kids tried to get out of this, that they don't care about the cigarette side, it's all about the radioactive side. Howard Hughes, on the other hand, never recovered from the Conqueror. In 1955, the year the Conqueror came out, Walt Disney ended his 18-year partnership with RKO Studios. Walt Disney did this to create his own distribution company, and RKO lost a metric shitload of money. He lost his mind much later in 1955, sold the rights to RKO to a tire company, and then he retreated to his apartment where he slowly but surely slipped into madness. He became obsessed with the Conqueror. He brought every reel in print for $12 million, trying desperately to bury this film. And he apparently watched it repeatedly as well in his own private screening room in this hotel that he'd bought, alone in the dark, surrounded by Kleenex boxes and, again, jars of pee. According to legend, he also had a projectionist that he forced to wear a blindfold so the projectionist couldn't watch the movie. This goes out of his fucking mind. Shame, guilt, maybe. Germophobia, absolutely. The man who once conquered the skies and is partially responsible for some of Hollywood's most classic films, died in 1976, haunted by a film that couldn't come anywhere near close enough to conquering the box office. I'm sorry, that joke was a bit lazy. It's late, man. Today, The Conqueror is revered as one of the worst films of all time. A radioactive disaster both literally and cinematically. It's a film taught in film schools as a cautionary tale about hubris, miscasting, and just not filming at nuclear testing sites. I feel like that's kind of, should be in everyone's contract, you know what I mean, moving forward. Did it kill John Wayne? Probably not. Did it help? Also, probably not. He spent his last years battling a very aggressive form of stomach cancer, and he would eventually succumb to it in 1979. Before he died, he reportedly said, "The Conqueror was the worst film I ever made, and it was a huge success." In a way, he was right. The Conqueror did succeed in becoming the worst movie of all time. A movie so bad it bombed twice. Ladies and gentlemen, new videos every fortnight. I apologize if this one is late. It's been a hectic couple of weeks at the BB Malloy household. You'll notice I've stopped cutting my hair. I'm just bored at the moment, and I'm trying desperately to make this YouTube thing work. So please hit like and subscribe. Chuck a comment. If you don't do any of those things, you will be cast in the radioactive sequel to The Conqueror 2 Electric Boogaloo. Come on, man. That's such a lazy joke. Okay. Anyway, peace and have a good day.
The past is sacred. I found more than I expected.